Welcome to In Conversation, where we speak with leaders who are shaping the future of commerce around the world. I am Sisca Margaretta, Head of Corporate Communications for Asia Pacific at Visa. In this special episode, I am joined by Andrew Torre, President of Value-Added Services at Visa. We'll together explore how Visa's value-added services are evolving globally with the rise of AI, the evolution of agentic commerce and stablecoins, the importance of trust and identity, and what clients are expecting as commerce becomes more digital, intelligent, and connected. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you for joining me in this episode of In Conversation. In the previous episodes, we've looked at value-added services from various business lenses. From a global perspective, where do you see the greatest white space, and what typically accelerates client adoption?
You actually foreshadowed my answer in the way you talked about client expectations. You talked about commerce is becoming increasingly digital, more intelligent, and more connected. And there's a serious amount of expectations with clients around that. I would say there's two things we think about with white space with VAS. The first is really providing impact. And impact for us is everything to do with our clients and their needs. And if you think about our clients, there are a lot to contend with. So they have new real-time payment systems all over the world. They've got new regulatory issues popping up, more regulation, more data. So there's a lot happening in that space. And then of course, there's their client, making sure they have real impact with their clients, whether it's customer engagement, getting authorization rates right, making sure you minimize fraud and increase good transactions. So around that space, whether it's a consumer and a seller, our clients need our support. And it comes down to us being able to drive that impact. And whether it's in our issuing solution space, whether it's in our fraud and risk space, whether it's in our acceptance space, and it's also our advisory teams, whether it's our consulting and analytics teams or marketing teams, they're very focused on where our clients need our support. They may not have the teams and the operations or the know-how to do that. And that's where we really lean in from a value-added services standpoint. I think the second area there then is if you're going to have the impact, you need to make that impact easy and simplistic. So we think always about how do we make sure it's easy to consume our services, right? So when you see something that's really valuable, you want to make sure it's easy to ingest, consume, and bring to your clients. So we're really focusing on very simple SDKs and APIs to be able to bring our services easily deployable for our clients. So those are kind of the big white spaces.
Speaking about white spaces, you have written about the shift towards AI-powered commerce, about more agentic shopping experiences. How does that impact value-added services, particularly as it relates to trust, identity, and decisioning?
So I'm a huge believer in agentic commerce and how quickly it's going to materialize. And if you just think about what we do in commerce and payments today, because there's a real nexus there. If you go back to what we've done around those three areas in just physical commerce and point of sale, it's largely very understood. So authentication, the person's there, they have a card. Intent is pretty easy because you show up with a shopping basket and generally it means you've got intent and you want to buy it. And then if something goes wrong, you can unwind it with a chargeback or a dispute. We're already plumbed for that. We've had to stretch ourselves in those dimensions from an e-commerce standpoint. Now you need digital forms of authentication. You need to make sure you have the right tooling and telemetry around risk solutions as well. And then the chargeback and dispute process follows. When you start to think about now an agentic world, that becomes more complicated. And we certainly, value-added services plays a role in all of those, but we need to up what we're doing in each of those. I think the one that is probably the most complicated there is intent. Because I'm no longer either clicking buy on a shopping basket or showing up at a physical store. So the way we think about that intent now is through a prompt with AI. So we need to be able to make sure we capture that data. I'll give you a good example. My wife's birthday is coming up next week. I've gone to an AI and I asked, so I know my wife very well, but I'm pretty bad about picking out presents. And I was focusing on travel because she really likes travel and art. And it gave me some ideas and even gave me the link to where I could buy that. Then I went to a traditional e-commerce transaction. But where we're going in the future is that's going to be very easy. I'm going to say, this is the thing I want. And in this case, it was kind of a cashmere shawl. Luckily, hopefully this doesn't come out before it'll, not that my wife's going to watch this, by the way, but it was a certain price point, it was a certain color. And then I need it delivered by a certain date. Like that's one thing for a birthday. So that intent needs to be captured in a prompt. And then we need to make sure we bring that all back so you understand it. And then there's the area around agents. So I will interface with a consumer agent as it goes out and looks at the discovery. It's going to find merchants, and it has to interface with a merchant agent as well. You've got the intent piece, and then you also have the piece around risk and identity that we have to also certify those merchant bots as well. There's work, as you can think about, chargebacks and disputes, identity authentication, and then finally helping our merchants, the small merchants, that generative AI and AI-based shopping and commerce is going to be a really way for them to be able to reach a far greater number of sellers. We're working really hard even in how we think about how we allow their inventory, their products and services to be discoverable for AI agents on the consumer side. There's a lot there, but we're working really hard on that.
So do you think that will make it more competitive for the smaller merchants?
I hope so. That's the great thing, right? Is in a world where you can buy anything, and there are these unique, and so there, if you want to find a unique gift somewhere, the ability for me to find a unique piece of art for my wife in Morocco, for example, that's going to be much harder for me to navigate individually. But now if I've got a consumer agent looking for me, we need the handshake from a merchant agent that understands, that small art sellers. It'll radically transform buying and hopefully allow these great small merchants that are out there to be discovered.
I think you've actually addressed quite a lot of what my next question was going to be around AI. If I were to kind of summarize the question, how real is agentic commerce today? Because you mentioned that you did use it, but you didn't transact.
I didn't transact because I think there's a couple of pieces that are going to happen now. Some of the things I talked about, we're making sure, one, that we have the ability with all the large language models to have the consumer, one, put in a card or a credential that's tokenized. You have a token and then biometric authentication. We want to get that in so you've got the identity secured. We'd love to be able to think about another vast service, push provision a data token. So, for example, for me, it's going to know all of my buying habits and shopping habits. So if I'm booking a hotel, it's going to know that I typically stay at, for example, a Bonvoy hotel, or I typically fly on these airlines. So it's going to bring things back that are pretty personalized. And if you just look at the way consumers are using already these AI platforms, there's a lot of shopping going on. It's just not finished, right? So they have to go back to, for example, an e-commerce transaction to complete that. So we're working hard to do that. And we're making sure not only on the consumer side, but on the seller side, that we're working to be able to integrate in our acceptance platforms the ability for merchant agents so it can distinguish between bots, because the bad guys are going to be out there, and we need to be able to differentiate when it is a legitimate merchant agent versus a bot, which is really important.
Yes. Let's talk about the other rapidly emerging technology, which is stablecoins. Stablecoins are moving from experimentation to real commercial use cases. Where are stablecoins creating the greatest value today? And how is Visa helping our clients to adopt with trust and scale?
So, we've watched the rise of stablecoins. There have been markets that have already created regulatory clarity, which is really important. The Europeans did it with MiCA. The Genius Act was just passed as well, which is great. What stablecoin started as was kind of a bridge between fiat and crypto transactions. So 99% of stablecoin transactions today are just capital market transactions. So someone's loaded fiat gets translated to stablecoin buys a cryptocurrency, right? But there's a lot more potential beyond that. And that's what we're starting to see. So I think there's a couple of use cases for the industry more broadly. One is modernizing settlement infrastructure, which is really, really important. If you just think how the world works today, there's still a lot of kind of correspondent banking happening, which is not 24/7. Stablecoins allow you to be 24/7, be able to move money anywhere in the world 24/7. You know it's going to be there. You also have real clarity on the price points. So it'll be all published. So we're actually using it today, starting with some settlements. So our clients are able now to settle with us with stablecoin, which is great. But I think that's going to be a broader trend around the industry. Also, if you just think about what I just said around moving money cross-border, you can use that same infrastructure today. So there are certain corridors where you may have to go through multiple hops. You don't know how long it's going to take for the money to get there. So you think about 24/7, it's going to get there instantaneously, and the fees are going to be very clear. That's another big area around remittance, P2P, et cetera. There's also the ability, for consumers or financial or companies to have a digital wallet and hold stablecoin there as well. And we've seen that in some of the emerging markets where there have been rapid depreciation. Consumers are getting digital wallets and buying stablecoin, and really just to protect the value of their own assets. So that's happening. We've also seen folks that have digital wallets with stablecoin, and then they want to be able to spend money. So we've been able to provide them with cards, so a Visa card. So anywhere in the world, off of your stablecoin currency, you can buy and shop just the way you would as if you were dipping into your current account as well. What we're doing at Visa, I did mention one, we're really working to be able to bring it into our own settlement systems. Two, we've been working with these on-ramps and off-ramps to get Visa cards out there. We also have a practice area in our consulting and analytics team. Right. Everyone is very excited. A lot of our clients are excited about it. And we started early on this. We have a great crypto digital asset stablecoin team, and them working together with our consulting and analytics team, where we're sitting with our clients and talking about what does it mean for your institution? How can we help create a strategy for you? And then the final thing we've done is when you start to think about more broadly, tokenized assets, we have a VTAP, or tokenized asset platform, where we can support different use cases as well.
I think it's safe to say from everything that you were saying, any institution that moves money will need a stablecoin strategy, whatever that strategy may be, but you need to be ready for it.
Yeah, and I mean, the adoption is really fast, so absolutely. Everyone should have a stablecoin strategy now.
It's so obvious throughout this conversation just how much focus you put on clients. You mentioned in every breath. And I know that's an important thing to you in your role, meeting clients, hearing from them directly. From your conversations with merchants, issuers, or fintechs, what are you hearing that they want more of from Visa, whether in the services that we offer today or we could offer in the future?
I've got a great team that's out in the market every day talking to clients, and that feedback comes right back to our business units. If you look at those white space trends I was talking about, there are key themes though. One is everyone's on a modernization journey some way or another. The payment systems become more complex, and I think our clients are really understanding that there are things they need to do with their technology queue that are really important for them, that's going to differentiate them. And then they understand there are things that we can do uniquely once at scale to help them really drive modernization, digital transformation. So, we bought an asset called Pismo, which I think you know well. For those who don't know well, it is a really cloud native, modern issuer processing core banking system. And we're getting a lot of traction with that because if you just follow there's a lot of complexity in the ecosystem. A good example is the Flex credential. So we've got this great Flex credential, this idea of, in a digital world, why would I give you a debit card, a credit card, a prepaid card when I can give you one credential? And on the back end, your intention of which account it should dip into, it'll pull from that. The reality is bringing that to market is complicated. What we've done is, we've bought a company that allows us to be able to really enable that for you very, very quickly. So I think that's one area that we're seeing a lot of client adoption in, a lot of interest, and it's starting to really, really work well. I think the other thing is, if you think about how we dealt with risk and fraud, it was largely on Visa transactions before. All right, so we've got really, really good AI tooling around that to be able to detect good transactions and then stop the bad transactions. But as we know, I just talked about these RTP systems that are out there. Fraud is shifting to them. One of the reasons it's shifting there is because there is a lot of value moving there, but it's instantaneous, and often they don't have chargeback or dispute mechanisms. So it's a great way for the bad guys to trick people with social engineering or phishing and then pull that money out. So we've had to again go and really look at how we can support our clients. So we follow our clients, and we bought a company called Featurespace that's really good at this. We have our own set of solutions there as well. So, the good news is we're talking about AI and all the ways we're going to use it. The bad guys are using it as well, and they're using it in ways that are actually really profound. So we're in a race to keep up to be able to protect our clients there. And the same thing on the acceptance side as well. Lots of areas there. And it is around these major themes, reducing complexity, doing things that we can do to help them and allow them to focus on the things that really differentiate and matter for them.
Turning to Asia Pacific, this is your second visit to Asia Pacific in less than 2 months. I'm interested in your observations of what's unique about Asia Pacific's payments landscape that will shape how you prioritize value-added services in the region.
We work market by market, and we're always going to tailor solutions for that last mile or last kilometer for the complexity in those markets. What is unique about AP, it's been on the vanguard of certain trends. So mobile wallets, they started certainly in China, but they've spread beyond. So the proliferation of wallets, different forms of payment. I was at one of the hawker markets last night, and I watched something that was amazing. I watched a woman very quickly use her Apple Pay and loaded it into an app, and then she scanned a QR code to pay. And I said, why did you do that two-step process? And she said to me, first of all, she looked at me like, what are you doing? And then she saw I was curious. I explained I was into payments. And she said, well, look, I loaded it with Apple Pay, but it's a wallet, and I'm getting a 10% discount here. So very quickly went to load it with Apple Pay and then scan a QR code. But I think that shows you the proliferation of wallets and it was a 10% discount. So someone was willing to pay for that 10% discount to really gain adoption. So wallets everywhere, spreading, and then they're obviously spreading, whether they're from e-commerce systems, whether they're from large merchants and sellers. That's pretty unique here, how that's panning out. And certainly, if you just think about some of the things I talked about, there's certainly ways we can help these wallets, whether it's risk, fraud, issuing solutions or acceptance solutions to be able to help support that. I also mentioned the advent of these real-time payment systems as well here. India was probably the first place that really started with the real-time payment system and UPI, right? And so that's been pretty profound. And we've looked at also how we can help support these real-time payment systems. So our clients said we love them, but we need that help. So those are, I think, definitely two of the things, and just the level and pace of innovation. You've got this interesting balance between fintechs and traditional financial institutions coming together. Actually, a great place to be able to learn and adapt technology that we know we'll be able to take to other parts of the world as well.
Andrew, it's been a great conversation. It's always good having you around in the region, so hopefully to see you more in the future. But Thank you so much for being on In Conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.